Very warm welcome to you. It's Gene from maverickstar. Guys, I want to say huge thanks to those few people that have been chipping in the last couple of days. You know what? I've noticed a little difference, and I just don't know what's happened to you guys out there. You know what's changed in what we've always done. How come a few more now are starting to realise what we're doing here is reporting science in an honest way. It's touching. It's really nice to see. I just hope that we can continue like this, and I've got to say a huge big thanks to you guys that have been making those one-off payments on PayPal and have recently joined us on Patreon. Kudos to you guys. We're looking at the temperature curve over the last 15,000 years, and what really is happening now, and we need to understand this and really take it on board, is nothing short of massive corruption, lies and fraud. And this is coming from our global politicians across the range, because no one is standing up and doing something about this, and it is coming from an unelected couple of organisations that seem to control the global politicians. I'm talking about the United Nations and the European Union. Not one of these organisations have elected members. These are a syndicate of organised crime people that have got together and decided what is best for the rest of the world. And they're not even thinking about the best interests for the world. They're thinking about how they can justify sending that taxpayers' purse money to particular agendas, so that they can therefore pilferage that money out for their own wealth and waxing basically their own pockets rich. This is the temperature curve over the last 15,000 years, and recently, if we look at where we are in the 2000s, we can see that the temperature has been much warmer through the medieval warm period around 1,000 years ago, within the last 1,000 years. The Roman warm period around 1800 years ago was much warmer than it is now, and the Eleusine warm period again much warmer than it was now. But what they want us to concentrate on is temperatures from the 1900s. And sometimes they push it a little bit further back to the 1760s, and we know why that is, because that's when they say that's when the Industrial Revolution began. That's when we started burning fossil fuels, and from that point on we have changed the climate by adding more CO2 to the atmosphere, and therefore made it warmer. And as well as I do that they can't push this any further down the road than what they have, without having to admit now that this is now not global warming as they call it. They call it climate change, because climate change doesn't specify warm or cold, does it? Right? It's no rocket science why they've chosen to use climate change now as their key word, because they can't be held accountable. But you know what? I'm going to hold them accountable, because they said CO2 is driving our climate warmer, and they still, in small pockets, regurgitate this. And it is a shame and a crime that a lot of people around the world are sucked into this madness. And the reason why they are is because they believe that these world global elitists and politicians and members of European Union and the United Nations have their best interests at heart. Guys, we have seen massive failures brought about by these people, and they have achieved very little in the time that they have been, in the power that they have been accustomed to. What we're looking at here with this 15,000 year temperature chart proves absolutely categorically that they are wrong. 15,000 years ago, we came out of the last glacial period, and 25,000 years ago, the northern hemisphere on our planet looked considerably different to what it does today, and that is what we're returning into. And we're returning back into that ill-prepared, if not prepared. I'm going to say that again. There is no preparation for the masses as we every day creep closer to that point in time where our northern hemisphere begins to change. I've been on this planet 50 years, I'm 50 years old. I say, usually, if you follow me, I say, I've been round the sun 50 times. You get what I mean? And I remember, in my teens, evenings where the sun had been at a nice warm temperature all day, and it maintained that temperature throughout the evening. Doesn't do it anymore, does it? You must, first of all, realise that the temperatures that we are experiencing today are not the same as what we was, 35 years ago. I'm sure a lot of you know exactly what I mean. Let's take yesterday in the United Kingdom, for instance. We hit probably highs around 25 to close on 30 degrees Celsius yesterday, depending on what region you was in. But as soon as 7 o'clock came, it felt like you needed to put a jumper on or a cardigan on, because it wasn't sustained throughout the evenings like it used to be. I'm sure a lot of you will remember those days. Another thing that we see regularly now in our skies are those noctilucent clouds, and more particular on the evenings in the summers we see these cirrus clouds, and they form sundogs. If you're watching the sun set just before an hour or so it sets, you'll see these like little rainbow balls to the left and right, and sometimes directly above the sun. And that is an indication that there is ice crystals in the upper atmosphere, and they're causing that prismatic effect. Next time you're outside and you do have the affordability of spending a few moments out there, have a look at what I'm talking about, because those effects are more commonly seen over the Arctic Circle, and yet we're seeing those at more southerly latitudes. Our Earth has changed already dramatically, and it is affecting more people on a more regular basis, and it can be serious in some terms. People lose their livelihoods. They lose, even at worst case scenarios, their loved ones, if not their own life. I said a few months ago, there will be another 50,000 people die before the end of this year. I think we've already hit that figure if we compare how climate has, made it possible that that amount of people have already passed away due to just the effects of climate. Nobody talks about the farmers in the Far East committing suicide anymore, yet that's an alarming figure every month of thousands, because they have borrowed money to purchase seeds off a well-known company I don't need to mention, do I? And they've promised that these seeds will be able to flourish in either wetter climates or drier climates, and of course the weather has done something completely unexpected and the crops have failed, and they can't afford to pay back the money on which they borrowed to purchase those seeds, and they are going to lose their farms that they have had in their families for many years. They see it as the most they find themselves in that situation, comparing themselves to their ancestors that have passed these lands down to them, and seen it as a complete and utter failure on their own behalf. And of course, they take themselves off somewhere quiet and end their own lives. Think about that. And that's what we're dealing with, and this company I'm talking about is £1 billion organisation. That has not just, misled people into believing that by using these seeds, that they can produce massive yields, good yields that are profitable for them. They've also destroyed people's livelihoods that, have lived close to, their seeds that have been sprinkled in other fields, and they're growing, thousands of acres of GMO seeds specifically designed, to make the most of the conditions of where they are. And of course, you have cross-pollination caused by winds, and these only have to end up in very small quantities, but this company will send officials out to check if they have cross-pollinated with other crops that are not GMO, and if they find that they have that specific gene in those seeds that have been patented, then they will sue the living daylights out of the farmer because of that. And I just want to say this, I remember a farmer asking me, what can I do in this situation? I said, well, you should look closely at what is in the core samples over the Arctic regions of our planet, because you will see that these seeds are not just transported 50 meters across boundaries of fields, because what this organisation suggests you do is you put a buffer crop in, or you leave a large space around your fields so that the cross-pollination can't take effect. But these pollination does spread much further than 50 meters. In fact, it spreads hundreds, if not thousands of miles if it's caught within the jet streams that will take it up to the northern hemisphere. And I said you should dig deeper into the evidence of that, and maybe that will help your case against that company suing you for claiming that you have stolen, not paid royalties on those crops that you're growing. This is just some of the small things that mount up to bigger things, guys, in our world. This is what's happening on a great scale. And when we look at 15,000 years of accurately reported temperature over that period of time, it is futile to just base climate on 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, because you get, the further you go back, a more clearer picture of what is taking place. They have ostracized CO2, made it a criminal particle within our atmosphere, and yet we all know what CO2 does as a critical food for any biodiversity that relies on it. If we look at industrial greenhouses, they will bring up the CO2 levels to around 1700 parts per million, and if you're working in those environments, it's perfectly safe, because as you're listening to me right now, if you are in a room on your own, doesn't have to be a massive room or a small room, if you were to check the CO2 levels there, you would find them already over 1,000 parts per million. And my point is here is, how can it be dangerous for you to walk out your front door into an environment where the parts per million are measured at 420, and they are dropping? Trust me, we do measure on a regular basis 2 or 3 times every month the CO2 levels, and you can check on the website poleshiftnews.com. In the Earth Health at a glance, you'll see the first thing we measure there is atmospheric CO2. If you compare that over the last 12 months, 13, 14 months, you'll see that CO2 is actually dropping, and it will do that naturally because our Earth is, are you ready for this? It is calling. Yes, our Earth is beginning to return back into a glacial period, and it's already estimated to be 6,000 to 8,000 years in that direction already. I believe we are not too far away from passing a thermocline where it cannot be no longer ignored. Everybody at that point will notice the effects of the returning back into a glacial period. And guys, it's unfortunate for me to say this, but that will be the case for the next 90,000 years. This is a cycle. Every 100,000 years we go in and out of interglacial and glacial periods, And that is one thing you will not hear coming from any scientific organisation, from any climatologist, from any mainstream media reports. You will not hear these things, what I am mentioning to you right now. So you can see the clear evidence before you. You can see the criminals, what they say, and they are just abusing public trust on this. I'll leave you with those thoughts, but before I end, guys, I just want to say, kudos to that person yesterday in the comment section. I do read the comments. I'm sorry I can't answer them all, but I do. And I did congratulate that one for working something very obvious out. And it's not obvious to everyone because a lot of people, and it's no fault of them, their own, don't see the wood through the trees. But this person obviously looked at what we call our channel, Maverickstar Reloaded. And of course, if you break those things down, you'll be surprised at what you might find. And I could leave you guys to work it out, but I'll just tell you, it's no secret. But it is nice when somebody does recognise it. And of course, Maverick means unorthodox. Star can also mean a sun, because most people don't call our sun a star, do they? They call it a sun. And reloaded. So, what I'm talking about here is what somebody had worked out is Jesus Christ was the unorthodox son, and he's returned. And that is exactly what Maverickstar Reloaded is all about. Guys, there's a link down there if you want to help support what we do. I'm hoping that you will, some of you will continue, what we've witnessed over the last few days, because it's great to see a few more people coming along and supporting what we do. And the only other thing to say is there's a link down there. You take care of your loved ones, and I'll say what I usually do. Bye for now.